This video is brought to you by Audible. Audible is your one-stop shop for spoken word entertainment with an endless selection of audiobooks, podcasts, original celebrity content, meditations, and more. Personally, I like to use Audible when I'm out and about or when I'm doing some boring task that desperately requires some background noise, preferably fun and/or educational background noise. Of course, what I like most about Audible is that every month I get a credit to use on whatever premium title I like, regardless of cost. And on top of that, if I don't use the credits, then they simply roll over. In case you need a place to start, I'd like to recommend Spook: Science Tackles the Afterlife by Mary Roach. I've actually talked about this title before, as it's one of my all-time favorites, and you can try it for absolutely free with a 30-day, also free, trial of Audible by heading over to audible.com/ReignBot or texting ReignBot to 500-500. Again, that's audible.com/ReignBot or just text ReignBot to 500-500. Some time ago, I came across this image posted by a Filipino beauty influencer and quickly learned that it had garnered some backlash. Of course, you're probably completely confused as to why, and so was I at first, but once I looked into it, the controversy became clear. As it turns out, this influencer actually did this look as a tribute to a murdered teenage girl, and while you might expect the half-exposed skeletal look to be more symbolic, unfortunately, it was not. As it turns out, the victim, 16-year-old Christine Silawan, was found dead in exactly that state. And while this case is technically legally closed, not everyone is satisfied or convinced that true justice has been served. To explain why, we'll first have to start from the beginning. The story of Christine Silawan's death starts in March of 2019 in Mactan, Cebu, Central Philippines. At the time, Christine was in high school and worked at a local church. According to her family, on the day Christine disappeared, it was late afternoon, and she was on her way there. Normally, she would only be at the church for the duration of the service, so when Christine didn't show back up a couple hours later, her mother began to worry. The police were eventually contacted, and the search for Christine began, but it didn't last long. The next day, the half-naked body of what appeared to be a young woman was found in an empty lot, not far from where Christine lived. The body had been mutilated, with half of the face having been removed, but even with its extensive damage, it took no time at all to connect the dots. Christine's family positively identified her shortly thereafter. Now, it goes without saying that this news shocked the community, not just in Mactan, but also nationally. The entire country was mortified by the brutality of this crime and wanted answers, but above anything, they wanted justice. To many, what happened here was clear as day. Christine had been sexually assaulted, killed, and then dumped, but not everyone agreed. In the early days of this case, authorities claimed that there was no proof that Christine had been raped, and as you can imagine, no one was buying this. After all, Christine's body had been naked from the waist down. Another point of contention was Christine's face. Many questioned what the point of skinning her was, with some pointing out that this might be some kind of ritual, or perhaps the result of drug use on the part of the attacker. This was all yet to be figured out, but police already felt like they had some leads. They acquired CCTV footage of Christine and claimed that they were looking for 3 potential suspects, all male, and by the time this case wrapped up, 3 would be brought in. The first man was named Jonas Bueno, who was actually already on the run due to a completely different murder. Bueno was partially responsible for the killing and skinning of a 62-year-old male, but by the time police finally caught up with him, he was living under an alias on a completely different island. He confessed to the man's death, but insisted that there was no way that he could have been connected to Christine's murder due to a conflict in the timeline, and this turned out to be true. His alibi was later corroborated by an employer who had placed him on a job site on the day Christine was killed. The second suspect is one that remains controversial to this very day. Believed to have been ID'd on CCTV footage was a teenage boy who had previously had a romantic relationship with Christine. The two had supposedly gone through a breakup just a couple days before, and to many it was all too obvious. He had to be the killer, jealous of Christine for moving on. The boy's family, on the other hand, disagreed. According to them, the ex could not have been responsible because he was with them on the night Christine was murdered, but not many people cared for their claim. For weeks, it seemed as though the police had caught their perp. But then, a bizarre turn. About a month following the arrest of Christine's ex, 43-year-old Renato Yanez was taken into custody for a completely different charge, and while at the station, he told police that he had something weighing down on his mind. It was then that Yanez supposedly broke down out of guilt and confessed to killing and skinning Christine. He claimed to have been a catfish who lured her in under a false online identity. The two were meant to meet up that night, and while reports of what happened during their meeting vary slightly, in the end, Christine would reject this man, and in response, he would escalate the situation to the point of murder, something that he blamed on being under the influence of drugs. In detailing his crime, Yanez claimed to have attempted to sexually assault Christine, but says that he failed. He also confessed to using a pair of scissors to skin Christine's face in an attempt to prevent her from being ID'd. Once the news of this man's arrest went public, police were convinced that the case was closed. Christine's ex was released shortly after due to a legal technicality. As it turns out, he'd been arrested without a warrant, but by all accounts the cops didn't seem too concerned with him by this point anyway. Yanez himself even pleaded for the boy to be released because he supposedly did not want him taking the blame for a crime he did not commit. According to the man, he worked completely alone. With that, the case was legally closed, but things did not exactly end with a neat bow on top. Like I just mentioned, Yanez claimed that 1, he did not rape Christine, and 2, that he had worked alone. But during a second autopsy conducted by the public attorney's office in April of that same year, this could not have been true. While the initial autopsy found no signs of sexual assault, the second found both abrasions and bruising that would lead the medical examiner to conclude that Christine had indeed been raped. The medical examiner also added that acid had been used to help remove the skin of the face, and on top of this, he also claims that a minimum of 3 people had to be involved. Again, it was 3 people of interest that the police were initially looking for, but one got ruled out and the other was let off the hook due to poor police work. One way or another, the number 3 comes up time and time again in this case, and while I'm not sure how the medical examiner concluded that 3 people were involved, the idea stuck nonetheless. Still, Yanez remained adamant about him being the only person involved, and if it wasn't true, then why bother covering up for other people at all? It doesn't seem like something that anyone would lie about, but at the same time, we know there's a very, very high chance that this man is lying about sexually assaulting Christine, and as such should not be taken at face value anyway. The thing is though, if he did lie, then he took his secrets to the grave with him, because in May of 2020, Yanez was found dead in his cell, believed to have taken his own life. In the end, people were only left to hope that the cops got the whole story, but many believe that Christine's ex still could have been involved based on the remarks from the medical examiner and his apparent sighting on CCTV footage. As things stand right now, however, since Christine's case was officially closed, it doesn't seem as though any further digging will be done, even if to many, not everything adds up. This video was edited by Darkfire Productions, researched by Lux Noctis, and written by yours truly. As always, I'd like to thank every single one of my lovely supporters, but especially the following people: T. Gorman, Connor H, Base of Shadow, WH, Sean the CHB, AJ Runaway, Amelia J, Andrew L, Anthony, Astro, Bloody the Elf, Brandon S, F, Catherine L, Corky Barks, Daniel G, David G, Dimitri L, Eric M, Espernix, Jamie P, KMBK Ketchup, Mishi, Ronnie, Sal A, TBF, Tyler T, Ulysses, Zvichazales, Daniel P, The Deck of Cards, Gyoza Fairy, Bathtime Duck, Chris M, Chris R, Clifford S, Deja, Echo Steele, Eddie, Elon Musk, I can't say that, I know that you did that on purpose. Francisco B, James M, Jamie M, Val C, Kyle R, Luck B, Matt J, Mega Brutal, Melly, Nick B, Panda Tiger, Patrick A, Pen Stift, Rye S, S Christine, Scorian S, Sky Grinder, Solar Avalon, Sora Rabbit, S PC Zippo, Terry the Outlaw, The Man in the Crowd, Zarai, Zimbledorf the Calzone Consumer, Sir Tim Thinks a Lot, I think that's how you say that, and Stephen S. Again, thank you guys so much, and if you're still listening, you're insane, but I love you, and I'll see you next time.